The Whispering Woods. A group of high school students, including 16-year-old Sarah, excitedly boards a bus for a field trip. Their destination, the Whispering Woods, a nature reserve known for its dense forests and mysterious legends. The teacher, a stern but caring woman, counts the students as they settle into their seats. The bus arrives at the entrance to the woods. The students disembark, chattering excitedly. The teacher gathers them for a brief orientation before they head into the forest. She warns them to stay on the marked trails and always remain with the group. The group hikes along a narrow trail, surrounded by towering trees. Sunlight filters through the canopy, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Birds chirp, and the forest is alive with the sounds of nature. Sarah lags behind, taking pictures with her phone. She notices strange carvings on the trees, symbols she doesn't recognize. The group reaches a clearing where they stop for lunch. The teacher assigns a buddy system, reminding everyone to stick together. Sarah sits with her friend, Lucas, and they eat their sandwiches. Sarah shows Lucas the photos of the carvings, but he brushes them off as old markings from park rangers. After lunch, the group splits up into smaller teams for a scavenger hunt. Sarah and Lucas pair up and venture deeper into the woods. They follow a path that seems less traveled, drawn by the allure of adventure. The forest grows denser, and the air feels heavier. They stumble upon an old, abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. It's dilapidated, with vines creeping up the walls and broken windows. Despite feeling uneasy, they decide to explore. Sarah pushes the creaky door open, and they step inside. The interior is dark and musty. Dust particles float in the beams of light that penetrate the broken windows. Old furniture, covered in cobwebs, is scattered around. On a table, they find a faded journal. Sarah opens it and reads aloud. The journal describes strange occurrences and whispers in the woods, warning future visitors to stay away. Suddenly, they hear whispers outside, indistinct and eerie. The whispers seem to call their names. Lucas suggests they leave, but Sarah is determined to investigate. She steps outside, looking around. The whispers grow louder, more insistent. Sarah and Lucas follow the whispers, leaving the safety of the cabin behind. The forest becomes darker, the trees more twisted. They find themselves in an area where the trees are carved with the same symbols Sarah saw earlier. The air is thick, and an unnatural silence falls over the woods. They reach a small clearing with a large ancient tree at its center. The whispers are deafening here, almost like a chant. Sarah touches the tree, and the forest seems to come alive with movement. Shadows flit between the trees, and the ground trembles. Realizing they've ventured too far, Sarah and Lucas try to retrace their steps, but the forest has changed. The paths are different, and they can't find their way back. Panic sets in as night falls. The whispers turn into sinister laughter. The teacher and the other students, worried about Sarah and Lucas, begin searching for them. They call out their names, but there is no response. The forest seems to swallow their voices. Sarah and Lucas huddle together by the ancient tree, scared and lost. The shadows around them grow darker and more defined. Closing in, they see figures emerging from the darkness, twisted ghostly forms with hollow eyes. The whispers become voices, accusing and angry. The teacher and the students finally reach the clearing, but it's empty. No sign of Sarah or Lucas. The ancient tree stands silently, its carvings glowing faintly in the moonlight. The whispers have stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. As dawn breaks, The search party retreats, unable to find Sarah and Lucas. The woods are calm and quiet, hiding whatever secrets they hold. The bus departs, leaving the whispering woods behind. The legend of the woods grows, with the story of the missing students adding a new chapter. The Lost Village. A group of high school students, including 17-year-old James, eagerly boards a bus for a field trip to a historic site in the countryside. Their teacher, an enthusiastic historian, explains that they will visit the ruins of an old village abandoned in the 1800s. The bus rumbles along a dirt road, leaving the city behind. The landscape grows wilder, with dense forests and rolling hills. The students peer out the windows, fascinated and a bit unnerved by the isolation. The bus arrives at a clearing where a narrow path leads into the forest. The teacher gathers the students, reminding them to stay together and follow the marked trail. James lingers at the back, uneasy but curious. The group hikes through the forest, the path winding between ancient trees. Sunlight filters through the dense canopy, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The teacher points out various plants and animals, engaging the students with tales of the village's history. They arrive at the ruins-crumbling stone houses overgrown with ivy and moss. The air is thick with an unnatural stillness. The teacher explains that the village was mysteriously abandoned with no records explaining why. The group gathers in what was once the village square. A stone well stands at the center, its water black and stagnant. The teacher divides the students into smaller groups to explore the ruins. James teams up with his friends, Lisa and Ben, and they head towards an old church at the edge of the village. The church is a shell of its former self, with broken windows and a collapsed roof. James, Lisa, and Ben step inside, the air cold and damp. They find strange symbols carved into the walls, crosses entwined with serpents and eyes that seem to watch them. Behind the church is a small cemetery, the headstones worn and tilted. Lisa spots a gravestone with her birth date, sending chills down her spine. James brushes it off as coincidence, but they all feel a growing sense of unease. As the sun begins to set, the teacher calls the students to regroup. James, Lisa, and Ben hurry back to the square, but find the path has changed. The forest seems denser, the trees closing in around them. They reach the square, but it's empty. No sign of the teacher or the other students. The village seems darker, more menacing. James checks his phone, but there's no signal. They decide to follow the path back to the bus. Night falls quickly, the forest engulfed in shadows. The path twists and turns, unfamiliar and labyrinthine. The air is filled with whispers, indistinct and eerie. James, Lisa, and Ben quicken their pace, panic setting in. They stumble upon an old house they hadn't seen before. Desperate for shelter, they enter. The interior is dark, with only the faint glow of their flashlights. Dust covers everything, and the air is thick with decay. Exploring the house, they find old photographs of the villagers. The faces are blurred, but the eyes are clear and haunting. Lisa notices a diary on a table and starts reading. It details the villagers' descent into madness, plagued by visions and whispers from the forest. The whispers grow louder, filling the house. The friends huddle together, their flashlights flickering. They hear footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate. James decides to confront whatever is making the noise. James climbs the creaky stairs, Lisa and Ben close behind. They find a room at the end of the hall, its door ajar. Inside, a shadowy figure stands by the window. back turned to them. The whispers stop as the figure slowly turns around, revealing hollow eyes and a twisted smile. James, Lisa, and Ben flee the house, running blindly into the forest. The path before them shifts and changes, leading them deeper into the woods. The whispers return, now angry and accusing. They find themselves in a clearing with an old twisted tree at its center. The tree is covered in the same strange symbols they saw in the church. The ground around it is disturbed, as if recently dug up. As dawn breaks, the forest becomes silent. James, Lisa, and Ben find themselves back at the clearing where the bus is parked. Exhausted and terrified, they collapse as the teacher and the other students rush to them. The bus drives away, leaving the forest behind. The teacher assures James, Lisa, and Ben that they will be fine, but they can't shake the feeling that something followed them. They glance back at the forest, seeing shadows move among the trees. The haunted asylum. A group of high school students, including 16-year-old Olivia, excitedly boards a bus for a field trip. Their destination, the ruins of Blackwood Asylum, an old mental institution abandoned in the 1960s. The teacher, a quirky history buff, assures them it's perfectly safe, though the place is rumored to be haunted. The bus arrives at the asylum's entrance. The students disembark, chattering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The sprawling, decrepit building looms before them, its windows shattered and walls covered in ivy. The teacher gathers them for a brief orientation, emphasizing safety and the buddy system. The group walks through the overgrown grounds, the path littered with fallen leaves and debris. Olivia and her best friends, Jack and Emily, stick together. The teacher points out historical features, sharing eerie tales of the asylum's past, including strange experiments and patient disappearances. They enter the asylum through the main doors, which groan on rusty hinges. The interior is dark and musty, with graffiti on the walls and broken furniture scattered around. The air feels heavy, filled with an unsettling silence. The teacher leads them down the main hallway, their footsteps echoing. The students explore an old ward, peering into patient rooms. Olivia finds an old journal under a bed, its pages yellowed and brittle. She flips through it, reading about a patient who claimed to see shadows moving on their own. She shivers and puts the journal back, feeling uneasy. Jack and Emily discover a treatment room filled with rusted medical equipment. They joke about haunted hospitals, but their laughter dies when they hear a faint whisper. They look at each other, then at Olivia, who's equally spooked. They decide to stick closer to the group. The teacher suggests they split up to cover more ground, giving each group walkie-talkies. Olivia, Jack, and Emily volunteer to explore the basement. They descend the narrow, creaky stairs, the air growing colder with each step. Their flashlights flicker as they reach the bottom. The basement is a maze of corridors and rooms, many of them filled with decaying furniture and old files. They hear water dripping and the occasional skittering of rats. As they move deeper, the whispers return, louder and more insistent. Olivia swears she sees a shadow darting past them. They find a room filled with old electroshock therapy equipment. The atmosphere is oppressive, the air thick with a sense of dread. Jack finds an old newspaper clipping about a patient who died during a session. The date on the paper matches today's date, decades ago. Suddenly, their walkie-talkie crackles to life. It's the teacher, asking if they're all right. Olivia responds, but the signal is weak and filled with static. She hears a strange voice cutting through, whispering her name. Panicked, they decide to return to the surface. As they navigate the maze-like corridors, they realize the path has changed. Doors they passed earlier are now closed, and the layout seems different. The whispers grow louder, more distinct, filled with pleading and anger. The air grows colder, and their breaths become visible. Night has fallen outside, and the basement is pitch black. Their flashlights flicker and die, plunging them into darkness. Olivia feels a cold hand brush against her arm and screams. Jack and Emily grab her, and they run blindly through the corridors, trying to find the stairs. They burst into an old operating room, its surgical tools still laid out, as if waiting for a procedure. The room is filled with a sickly green light, casting eerie shadows. They hear footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. The door creaks open, and a figure stands silhouetted in the doorway. The figure steps forward. It's the teacher, looking worried. She leads them back to the stairwell, explaining that she's been searching for them. They climb the stairs, feeling a sense of relief as they reach the ground floor. The whispers fade, and the oppressive atmosphere lifts slightly. The students regroup outside, shaken but unharmed. The teacher counts them, ensuring everyone is accounted for. Olivia, Jack, and Emily glance back at the asylum, its dark windows seeming to watch them. As they board the bus, Olivia swears she sees a figure standing in one of the windows, watching them leave. The bus arrives back at the school, and the students disembark, eager to go home. The teacher assures them it was just their imagination, but Olivia can't shake the feeling that something followed them back. As she walks home, she hears faint whispers on the wind, and the shadows seem to move just out of sight.